In the last video, I gave you the basic definition of a hinge joint collider. In this video, we're going to be diving in front and center. Up to this point, we've only used cubes and squares, but this time we're going to be using sprites. And then we'll add the hinge joint collider. So what we're going to do is empty game object. We're going to name this hinge joint. And we're going to add the sprite renderer. What a sprite renderer does, takes the default sprite material and makes it visible with the sprite in the sprite slot. Simple as that. And what we're going to do is hit the circle in the sprite slot, select the wrecking ball. We're going to add a circle collider 2D. Adjust the radius if you want to. Now we're going to add the hinge joint collider. If you noticed, it added the rigid body 2D automatically. Some components require other components to function, so it would add it automatically. Much like when we covered rigid bodies, we're going to be going over this one by one. Enable collision and connected rigid body are exactly what they are. Enable collision is for specified situations when you want to use scripting. Connected rigid body, much like how materials are used in rigid bodies, gives you a connected rigid body to latch onto and gain the same material functions. First thing we're going to tackle is the anchor. This is pretty much the pulley example in the last video. Basically the point where this wrecking ball is going to be held. Increase the y-axis so that it's right on the top. The connected anchor, the connected anchor, it values itself based on anchor position. And let's also move the wrecking ball a bit closer. Let's make sure the anchor is as much to the roof as possible. Enter play mode. And let's push it. Let's switch to scene view. As you can see, the anchor is holding everything together as it's going back and forth like a pendulum. This is the most basic use hinge joint colliders have, mostly as an obstacle. Let's continue with what else we could do. First, let's move the anchor a bit closer, more front and center. It doesn't have to be the exact value, just a bit closer. We're going to go with use motor. This basically dictates if we want the joint to move in a counterclockwise or a clockwise fashion. And you can set these settings in motor. Please note, if use motor is not checked, nothing will happen. So let's go with 20. As you can see, it goes in a counterclockwise fashion. We can increase the speed. And force is basically if we want to really push the player, as you can see. Let's turn off motor for now. And we're going to use limits. Limits let us, well, limit where and how far the ball in this case can swing. It may be hard to notice when switching the game, so in this case, we're going to observe both the game window and the scene window at the same time. We can do this by just grabbing game and moving it a bit. Adjust it for personal preference. And we see both happen. As you can see, nothing gets through the green sphere. This is also a great obstacle if you want to throw a curveball at the player. And just like motor, these numbers don't matter if use limits is checked off. Brake force basically means once either gravity or the player pushes it at a certain point, the hinge joint will delete itself and just stop working. Infinity is the default limit, making it unbreakable at the moment. We could easily change this. Let's set it to 15 for now. We're just gonna push it a bit, give it enough force, and it breaks and falls over. And torque is basically rotation. We're gonna set brake torque to 1. Press play. Push it again. And it breaks again. We could also use hinge joints to make a platform, though that takes some trickery. This is basically the foundation of a hinge joint. Next video, we're going to cover spring joints, which is a more suitable joint for platforms.